Is going on, everybody? Welcome to NFL Week 8 edition of the NFL Flowchart Show on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has just added Pick'em Scorchers, where you can win 100x. That's right, turn 5 into $500 in one game. Plus, every Sunday they're giving away $100,000. Use promo code SGPN at Underdog Fantasy for a 100% deposit bonus up to $500. What's going on? Thanks for joining me here on this fine Saturday morning, diving into the NFL Week 8 landscape. It's a big week. For some reason, we have no bye weeks this week after having 6 teams on bye in week 7, and then I think another 4 or 6 on bye in week 9. So we've got a big 13 games on the main slate, and that means we've got a lot of decisions to choose from. And I think ownership is going to spread out quite a bit here this weekend. So should be a pretty fun one to try to build GPP lineups. It's definitely going to need a pretty high score in order to get our tournament teams near the top. But hey, that's what we're shooting for every week, right? So let me start by getting the cash game flow chart up on the screen here. So I think cash is super interesting this week, and it actually hinges a lot on what's going on with Brock Purdy. Is Brock Purdy going to be available, or is it going to be Sam Darnold? And funnily enough, I think either way, a 49ers quarterback is going to be in play. I think if Brock Purdy is in, I think he's a potential option to play in cash at 5,600. If Brock Purdy's out and it is Sam Darnold, then he might become a cash game lock. But we think that we will find out more today on that Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, hopefully. And so this should not be something that is, we're deciding up until lock. We should know today and have plenty of time to plan for it. So, anyways, if the Sam Darnold path does arise, I'll get a tweet out there. I'll get some sort of update here to help everybody go down that path. But for right now, a couple sites are projecting Purdy in, so we're going to run with it. Okay. So with that being said, let's start with the cash game core. And these are the 4 players that I think should be in every single iteration of the cash game lineup that you land on. Start plugging these 4 players in and then build the rest around it. So first of all, it's Brees Hall, running back 5,900, and Tony Pollard, running back 7,500. I think these 2 guys are in just really great spots from a projection standpoint, and just really great spots from overall workload standpoint and stuff like that. And I think Pollard's been a bit disappointing this year, but I think he's got a potential bounce back spot here against the Rams. And then Brees Hall has just kind of been on a little bit of a rocket ship here since the start of the season, and I think that should continue. We saw the news about Dalvin Cook being unhappy with his role and stuff like that, so I think they just keep feeding Brees. And so Brees Hall will be the most popular player on DraftKings this weekend. I can almost guarantee that. The only other option that may challenge him for most popular player would be Trey McBride, tight end for the Cardinals at 2,800. Zach Ertz, went on IR this last week, and so Trey McBride was already starting to get a lot more work, a lot more usage. And so with Zach Ertz out of there, 2,800 is a really great price for Trey McBride. So I assume that he's going to be one of these over 50% players in cash this week, and I just don't think it's really worth trying to fade him or give different there at wide receiver. And then Tank Dell, I think, is another core player for me and helps make a lot of different things work. I do just realize I screwed up the back end of the flowchart here a bit because I have him on here twice, but that's just because that's how good of a player he is, and really want him to be in all the lineups. So yeah, 4,900 for Tank Dell. He's coming back from a concussion. But he's fully cleared it, and it shouldn't really affect him too much. And I think 4,900 is a really great price against this Panthers defense that they're going to be playing. Okay, so now that we got the cash game core, then we're gonna make our decision at quarterback. And I think there's really two options. And again, like I said, depending what goes on with San Francisco, there may be a Sam Darnold play that comes to light. But right now, I think it's either Jalen Hurts with the Eagles at 8,200 against the Commanders pass defense, which has just been a pass funnel, horrible. We know Hurts can sling it. We know he's a little bit maybe injured with that. I think it was like a knee that came out on their last game in prime time there. And so, they came out and said it's not a big deal, no issues there. But if he's for sure for somewhat limited in any way on the rushing, then that just helps his throw passing share a bit more and his receivers. So I think the tush push is always in play with Hertz getting that rushing touchdown, and I think the 300 passing yard ceiling is really potential here with against this Commanders team. So it should be a big day for Hurts. And then Brock Purdy, like I said, 5,600 for the Niners. And then from there, we're going to plug in our third running back. And again, if you have like a very strong opinion on Alvin Kamara with the Saints at 7,300 over Tony Pollard of the Cowboys for 7,500, you can go ahead and swap out Pollard from the core. I personally prefer Pollard here, but I can, easily see an argument for both. And definitely think Kamara is a great play. And then the other running back that is potential to be the third would be Isaiah Pacheco for the Chiefs. This Broncos defense is just not very good. The Pacheco's been really taking over the Chiefs' backfield for the last few weeks. And so, he should just be getting a lot of work here. So basically, between Brees Hall, Tony Pollard, Isaiah Pacheco, and Alvin Kamara, you're going to want to play three of those four running backs. Okay, so now is where it gets a little bit confusing this week in the flow chart. And again, like I said, I have Tank Dell on there twice, so apologies for that. Just go ahead and disregard that one there in Group A. But so there's basically like four different buckets of receivers here, right? So there's Brandon Ayuk, who's on in his own little world there at 7,000. There's Jamar Chase, who's also in his own little world there at 8,100. And then there's a group of guys that I'm calling Group A, which is Josh Downs and Kendrick Bourne, 4,800, 4,700. And then there's a group of guys which I'm calling Group B, which is Zay Flowers, 5,600, George Pickens, 5,500, and Christian Kirk, 5,900. So based on what you pick for quarterback and for your third running back, that is going to get you up to this red little key here at the top of the flow chart that says what to do based on what you pick in column two, right? So if you go Hertz and Pacheco, then you're going to pick Brandon Ayuk and you're going to fill in a guy from Group B, Zay Flowers, George Pickens, or Christian Kirk. If you go Hertz and Kamara, then you're going to pick a guy from Group B, Flowers, Pickens, Kirk, and Group A, Downs and Bourne. If you go Purdy and Pacheco, then you can actually fit in Jamar Chase and Brandon Ayuk, or you can go Jamar Chase and a player from Group B. And then if you go Purdy and Kamara, you can really do any combo that you want. So you can go Ayuk in Group B, you can go Jamar Chase and Ayuk, you can go Chase in Group B, Chase in Group A. I'm in Group B and Group A. I mean, there's plenty of ways to do it, and it all kind of depends on like what you want to do at defense. So a couple of these options and a couple of the pairings require you to play the Patriots defense at $2,000 min price, which I think is totally fine. Defense just does not matter to me at all this week. It usually doesn't matter to me at all. And I think even more so this week, I don't think it matters much. There's not like a standout defense. There's not going to be a high owned defense there at the bottom. I think the Falcons will probably be the most popular, but I'm not like needing to make them a priority into my lineup. So yeah, depending what combo you go with at the wide receivers, you'll have basically $2,000 left. You'll have about $3,000 left, or you'll have maybe like $3,500 left or so. And so yeah, I think Patriots at the $2,000 range. You could even make an argument for the Vikings at 2,500 if if you've got that much money left. And then I think Falcons and Jaguars at the $3,000 range, and then I think Seahawks and Giants are both fine at the $3,500 range. So again, I know that's a bit confusing. I think as you're building your lineup, it'll make a bit more sense. It's kind of tough for me to organize it on paper. There's just basically a like call it these 6 or 7 different receivers that depending what you do at running back, you kind of get different combos. So again, we'll break this down real quick. Brees Hall, Tony Pollard, Trey McBride, and Tank Dell is what I'm calling the cash game core this week. Then you're going to decide at quarterback if you want to go Jalen Hurts or Brock Purdy. Then you're going to decide at running back if you want to go Isaiah Pacheco or Alvin Kamara. And then from there, you're going to go to the little decoder key at the top of the flowchart this week. And based on your pairing, you're going to figure out if you want to get Brandon Ayuk, if you can fit Jamar Chase, if you can fit Josh Downs or Kendrick Bourne, and if you can fit Zay Flowers, George Pickens, or Christian Kirk. So yeah, very fun week in cash. I think, it's going to be again some kind of coin flip decisions here at what lineup looks best to the eye of the beholder, but using this format, using this layout here should give you a pretty good chance to get across that 50% mark. Okay, NBA is back, and we're giving away an NBA gambling podcast hoodie. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA dog to submit a screenshot of you playing NBA underdog using our promo code SGPN, and one random winner will get an NBA gambling podcast hoodie. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA dog. Okay, let's us jump in now to the GPP flowchart of the week. And so I think the GPP flow landscape this week is super interesting because so the past few weeks, a lot of the call it cheaper quarterback stacks have kind of been getting there a little bit. And people have been shying away a bit from the expensive quarterbacks. The expensive quarterbacks haven't really separated themselves from the pack. And some of the cheap guys have kind of been getting there. This week, however, all the expensive quarterbacks are kind of just in smash spots. You've got Hurts against the Commanders. You've got Lamar Jackson against the Cardinals. You've got Patrick Mahomes against the Broncos. Theoretically, all games that those guys should blow up in and should really go off. And as such, all those guys are projecting pretty well and going to grab some ownership too. And then you've also got some quarterback action going on still with the cheap guys a little bit, right? So, um, you know, as we talked about in cash, Brock Purdy projects pretty well. Russell Wilson actually projects pretty well. Kenny Pickett down there at 4,900 projects pretty well against the Jaguars. And yeah, I think there's, going to be kind of a decision by the field to go up to an expensive quarterback, Mahomes, Hurts, or Lamar, or down to one of those cheaper quarterbacks I just mentioned. And I think the mid tier of quarterback is going to go pretty unowned. And so we are just kind of going back to the well here. We haven't done one of these for a while. I think probably midway through last season was the last time we rolled out one of these Bengals alpha double stacks. But here we are, week 8, 2023. We're doing it, baby. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Let's keep it simple. Let's root for a Bengals high scoring affair and let's let it ride, baby. So with this Bengals alpha double stack, I just don't think anybody's going to play it. Jamar Chase is going to be popular. People are going to be playing Higgins off of Chase as leverage. Nobody's really going to play Joe Burrow for the reasons I just mentioned with the QBs. And so if nobody's playing Burrow and a lot of people are playing maybe one or the other of Chase and Higgins, this double stack is pretty spicy to me. And I think it's going to be pretty fun to root for. Now, the other reason why nobody's going to play it is because the Niners are pretty freaking good, right? They have a great defense. and uh, it's a no doubt a tough matchup for these Bengals against the Niners defense. However, we've seen some crazy stuff happen. We've seen the Niners lose to the Browns a couple weeks ago. We've seen the Browns lose to the Indianapolis Colts. Colts put up like, or I guess, wait a minute, did the Browns win that one? Yeah, Browns won that one, but the Colts put up 35 points on them. Yeah, against this defense that was supposed to be the best in the league. And yeah, so I think I don't think it's the Colts put up 38 points on them. Sorry. So, anyways, I think this defense matchup stuff, especially if it's going to lead to low ownership, we just kind of throw it out the window and let it rip. Especially when we've got this alpha stack of Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. I mean, this has hit before. It's hit multiple times before. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's thinking about it. Nobody's going to play it this week. So let's make it happen. Okay. Now with the bring back, I think there's really great options on San Francisco this week with Debo Samuel out, and so that's why I think this is a really fun way to build 20 different lineups because you can bring back Brandon Ayuk, you can bring back Christian McCaffrey, you can bring back George Kittle as well, and all of those guys I think are really great options this week, and so. Personally, I will be building a lot of different combinations of this flow chart here and trying to get in 20 different lineups this weekend using the chart. So yeah, like I said, pretty much any of those three San Francisco Niners I'm on board with. Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle. So now we get to column number 3 of the flow chart. And if you go the Brandon Ayuk or Christian McCaffrey route, then you've got to fit in a tight end. And then which I'm pegging as Trey McBride. I know he's going to be popular. I know we usually don't like playing chalky, popular tight ends, but man, he is really above, in a way, any of the guys around him in this price range. And he lets you get kind of creative at that price tag of 2,800. So I'm personally not overthinking it too much. I know it's kind of gross to be playing a chalk tight end, but I think the rest of our lineup is not chalky enough that we can get away with it. So we're going to put Trey McBride in all the lineups that don't have George Kittle. And then from there, if you go with Christian McCaffrey, I like pairing him up with Christian Watson, 5,100 for the Packers. I know. We're off of last week where I proclaimed it was Christian Watson explosion week and the only thing that exploded was his knee there late in the second half. Did not have a big Christian Watson game. And he's, the exact type of player that is perfect for best ball because he's going to put up some duds, but one of these damn weeks he's going to put up a 30 ball and have a couple long touchdowns. So I am going to keep taking some shots on Christian Watson. I know it's gross. I know it may make you, give you some flashbacks to a bad week last week with the flow chart with Jordan Love and Watson, but we're going back to the well. Watson's got a big game coming somewhere here, and I think it might be against this Vikings secondary. And then if you take Brandon Ayuk, I think taking DeAndre Swift, pairing him up at running back there, I think is a really good play. Again, I just said how Hurts is probably going to be pretty popular. So I think DeAndre Swift is pretty good leverage off of the Eagles passing attack. And DeAndre Swift is right in that group of all the popular running backs this week, which are going to be, Brees Hall, Bijan, Isaiah Pacheco, Jonathan Taylor, and DeAndre Swift. And I think it's pretty good potential that Swift is the lowest owned out of those guys. Yeah, I think he could be a really good play. He's been seeing a ton of great usage lately, really taking over that backfield in Philadelphia. So we're going to load up Swift there. If you go with George Kittle route, then obviously you got your tight end position locked in, and so we're going to grab a wide receiver and a running back. And for that, I like Travis Etienne on the Jaguars 7,200 and Kendrick Bourne on the Patriots 4,700. Etienne this week is again going to be overlooked, I think, because a lot of people are going to play Pollard, a lot of people are going to play Alvin Kamara, and Etienne is $100 cheaper than Kamara, projects point or two worse than him, and I just don't think he's going to get clicked at all. And I think he's really great leverage on that group. you can't tell me that Kamara is 2 to 3 times more likely to outscore ETN, but that is what ownership is saying. And then in the Kendrick Bourne range, right? He I think is going to be the least popular of those mid 4,000 guys. That group A we talked about in the cash game flow chart. Yeah, I think he, could be in for a big game against Miami. Patriots obviously suck usually, and we don't really love playing Patriots. But if any team's going to kind of push him to score points, it should be the Dolphins here. So Kendrick Bourne, I don't mind at 4,700. And then uh, for either pathway of the flow chart here, I guess any of the three pathways of the flow chart here, you're going to need to fill in the gaps with two different players. And you're going to likely need to decide between a running back and a wide receiver. You could, I think, on some of the paths, you could get away with. No, you're actually going to need to play a running back and a receiver on each of these. Sorry about that. It just took me a little while to process. Okay, so for the running back position, we're going to put Brees Hall in here at 5,900. Again, I think this Joe Burrow lineup, double stack, is not going to be owned. You don't have to worry too much about ownership once you start with Burrow. So Brees Hall is totally fine and is projecting really well on the Sims, on the sheets, everything. Kareem Hunt, I think, is another really interesting option this week. It seems like even though Jerome Ford was like kind of practicing late in the week, I would assume they keep him out for this week's matchup. And so I really, really like Kareem Hunt at 5,200. I'm surprised he's actually not getting a little bit more buzz and a little bit more hype. It might be because Pierre Strong took on some of the runs once Ford went out last week, but I think that was just you know kind of due to game script and stuff like that. And I think Kareem Hunt's going to get a bulk of the carries this week, while Pierre Strong's going to mostly play special teams. And so a little bit surprised that Hunt's not getting some more buzz with Ford projected to be out. And then the other running back that I put over here, which is kind of gross, is Chuba Hubbard at 4,800. Miles Sanders is projected to be back. There's been a lot of coach speak this week about still having kind of a split backfield, still having you know, not really any of the true carry, not everything going towards Miles Sanders. So this is kind of just a bet on nobody playing the Panthers and them sticking with Chuba Hubbard, even though Sanders is back. This may not be something that looks great coming out of the first quarter, coming out of the first half. But maybe if the Panthers get some success against the Texans or need some success, they go to Hubbard. There's multiple paths here, right? It's either Sanders doesn't look well in his return, so they turn it back to Hubbard, and he, takes over in the second half, or Panthers play well and are, beating the Texans, and then they decide to load up Hubbard in the second half as well, because they want to keep Sanders with some rest. So, anyways, I think there's a couple paths to success. There's probably a lot more paths to failure, but hey, we're playing the GPP world. There's going to be a lot of failure. And then on the wide receiver list, got George Pickens. That we already talked about a bit in the flow chart. Really like that. The Steelers passing offense is really, really condensed now, with pretty much just everything going to Pickens and Deontay Johnson. Rashee Rice, I think, is a really interesting name at 5,000 this week. People are going to play Mahomes and Kelsey. People are going to play Pacheco. And Rice is probably the most comfortable click for Kansas City wide receiver, but I'm not sure how many people are going to get there. But we're just going to kind of keep betting on his rise up the boards and rise up the production this year, and just kind of keep betting on that. And then, like I said at the beginning of the cash game flowchart, Tank Dell I think is a great option this week, 4,900, coming back against those same Panthers that we just talked about, who are pretty decimated in the secondary. Really, I like both Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Tank's the guy that kind of makes this work. So again, just recapping the GPP flowchart here, starting off with the Joe Burrow alpha double stack with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Feels fun to play that. Haven't played that in quite a while. Then you're going to bring it back with a 49er, and you can take your pick on Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle. From there, if you go the Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey route, you're going to pair them up with Trey McBride at tight end. and then decide DeAndre Swift or Christian Watson. If you go the George Kittle route, you're going to go Travis Etienne and Kendrick Bourne, and then you're going to take your pick on filling in the gap with the last two positions at running back: Brees Hall, Kareem Hunt, Chuba Hubbard, and George Pickens, Rashi Rice, or Tank Dell at wide receiver. That wraps it up for the Week 8 NFL Flowchart show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I think we've got a really fun potential week here with this Burrow double stack, and I think there's going to be a lot of coin flips happening on the cash game side to see if we can get ourselves over the money line there. So good luck. Hope to see everyone at the top of the leaderboards. See ya.